This is Radio Health Journal. I'm Reed Pence. This week, people who are always late and simply can't perceive the passage of time.
Time is going to just slap you around because you're not able to anticipate what's coming at you and get ready for it. And it leads to a life of crisis after crisis after crisis.
Time blindness, when Radio Health Journal returns.
I'm Nancy Benson, host of Radio Health Journal. If you enjoy listening to Radio Health Journal, you'll also like our sister show, Viewpoints, which covers a wide array of topics from education to history to the environment. Here's a preview of what they're covering this week on Viewpoints.
When we focus on technologies, it's often actually the affluent in society who get to adopt the new technologies, like if you think about the Tesla electric car, for example.
The state of climate science in the U.S. Then,
a fair amount of people do experience what sometimes is referred to as compulsive buying or compulsive shopping. A lot of studies now show that about 5% of all people may experience problems like that in their lifetime.
The downsides of shopping till you drop. I'm Marty Peterson.
And I'm Gary Price. These stories in depth this week on your public affairs magazine, Viewpoints.
Listen to Viewpoints on your favorite radio station and subscribe and listen to shows anytime on Apple Podcasts and Google Play.
Parents always try to teach their children to be on time for everything and avoid procrastinating. It's the hallmark of being responsible. But sometimes people who are like that may be punctual almost to a fault. They may have little tolerance for people who aren't, who are always late and never finish anything on time.
There are some people at the other end of the spectrum who really struggle with time. They don't see it, they don't feel it. It's just kind of much more squishy and fluid for them. And as a result, they have a much harder time organizing themselves around time.
That's Dr. Ari Tuckman, a psychologist in private practice and co-chair of the conference committee at CHAD, the National ADHD Advocacy Organization. He says people who are invariably late often suffer from a brain disorder that can be an aspect of attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. It's what's called time blindness.
For example, someone who says, I need to leave in 5 minutes, and then they get caught up in something and they completely lose track of time. Now, granted, we've all done that to some degree. There are some people who do that often, and instead of 5 minutes becoming 8 or 10, 5 minutes can become a half hour or an hour. Also, they're often bad at estimating how long things will take, usually underestimating how long things will take. And all of this then creates a situation where if you can't really feel time and it's hard to predict how long things will take, managing time is a real crapshoot at that point. So as a result, they often miss the mark.
Technically, it's more like a myopia or nearsightedness to the future, which simply means that the further away in time an event is, the less likely one is to prepare for it. And while that's true of all of us, people with ADHD show a striking disregard for the future events that are coming toward them until those events arrive into the now, into the moment. And then they scramble to try to cobble something together to try to meet that expectation, often unsatisfactorily.
Dr. Russell Barkley is clinical professor of psychiatry at the Virginia Commonwealth University Medical Center and author of more than a dozen books, including the newly released 12 Principles for Raising a Child with ADHD.
And it leaves them frequently failing at tasks, being fired from work because of lack of punctuality, not having projects ready on time, in school and in college, not having your assignments done, not even being aware that they were due. You make social commitments to other people. I'll meet you for a date in front of the movie theater or restaurant at X time. And guess what? You don't show because you don't realize that that time has passed and that deadline has arrived. You and I know that the single biggest predictor of success in your occupation, if not in life, is your capacity for time management. And if you don't have that, you are adrift on a sea in time. You are clearly somebody who is standing with your back facing the ocean. Time is going to just slap you around because you're not able to anticipate what's coming at you and get ready for it. And it leads to a life of crisis after crisis after crisis that people are not sympathetic about because they got ready and you didn't.
People are not sympathetic because, to those who don't have time blindness, it's almost unfathomable.
Many of us don't need a clock. We have a sense of how much time has passed, when we need to start to get ready. That time deadline must be approaching now pretty quickly. I guess I better stop what I'm doing and, get ready to go to work or get ready to get on the school bus or, whatever it is you're required to do. And they don't have that at all. They'll just keep doing whatever it is they were doing, whether it's a video game or talking to somebody or just socializing, and all of a sudden the deadline has come and gone, and now they're late, and boy, do they have to scramble.
So to those who don't have time blindness, showing up for a date or an appointment an hour late looks like a personal insult. You must not care very much about the people whose time you've wasted.
They're often seen as kind of irresponsible because if only they cared more, then they would have gotten there on time or finished the report on time. They're seen as selfish. Your time is more important than mine. That is why you're late. But all of us, we tend to filter other people's actions through our own way of doing things. So, for example, if I'm pretty good at getting places on time and you run late, I'm going to make the assumption of, well, when I run late, it's because I don't really care that much about being there on time. Therefore, your being late must only mean that you don't care about my time. And it's an easy logical jump to make, and it's not always wrong, except in the case of folks with time blindness. It's not a problem of won't, it's a problem of can't.
In fact, Barkley says time blindness is a major red flag for ADHD, which is known to originate in structural changes in the brain.
We found that over 98% of adults who were in our research studies, including when we screened adults across the U.S., had major problems with time management, falling below 7% of the population, meaning that 93% of people are better at time management than they are. And it really causes a lot of problems in their life. It's not to say that other people without ADHD can't have timing problems. They certainly can. Some people procrastinate. Some people get anxious around, getting things done. But to these people, it's a ubiquitous part of their life, and it really leads to a lot of failure and distress.
Barkley says his studies prove his contention that time blindness is as intentional as color blindness. Those who are afflicted simply have no sense of time at all.
In one of them, we would turn on a light bulb for a given interval of time, all kinds of intervals from seconds to minutes, and then turn it off, and we would ask them, how long was that? They're a lot less accurate than other people, but the real telling deficit showed up when we said, okay, here's a time interval. Now you turn your light bulb on to match that interval. They couldn't do it. They were massively deficient in the ability to match these time intervals with their behavior. And, not to get too technical, but what we infer from that is you can't use time to regulate yourself. You can't guide your own behavior and motor performances with any kind of sense of time. And we know the circuit of the brain in ADHD that leads to this.
But without a diagnosis and treatment, time blindness is often misinterpreted. Tuckman says lots of people over about age 40 often still suffer from being labeled lazy and irresponsible. Back when they were kids, their teachers weren't on the lookout for ADHD the way they are today. But even now, parents of a child who's always late may react in exactly the wrong way.
I remember when I first arrived at the Medical University of South Carolina 18, 20 years ago, I went onto a radio show down there. And the first thing the host said was, isn't this just due to a lack of physical punishment? You're sparing the rod and spoiling the child. And don't these kids just need it, more trips to the woodshed? And it was, I couldn't believe that, in the year 2004, whatever that was, that people were still thinking that way about people with a biological problem. If you said that about somebody with autism or mental retardation, intellectual disability, that would be reprehensible.
Barkley and Tuckman say in many cases, failure and disapproval lead to anxiety, depression, and sometimes worse.
By the time people with ADHD reach young adulthood, they're highly demoralized because they haven't accomplished half of what they set out to do or know that they're capable of doing. In addition to that, 25% of them suffer from clinical depression during young adulthood. They have 2 to 4 times the rate of suicide attempts of other people by adulthood. And we also know that later in adulthood, nearly half of them develop an anxiety disorder. The longer their ADHD goes untreated, the greater the likelihood they'll develop some kind of anxiety disorder, particularly social anxiety. And it has to do with exposure to repeated failure. And you can't seem to get a handle on that and take control over that. So, yes, I mean, it becomes very, very discouraging to these people.
It even impacts things like health maintenance habits. And there's new research that's come out in the last few years that shows that folks with ADHD have significantly reduced life expectancy because all those good health maintenance habits, get into bed on time, eat healthy, brush your teeth, go to the doctor, remember a year from now to do a follow-up, get around to getting that, the imaging test or whatever, like all that stuff that keeps us healthy, all requires planning ahead, thinking about time, managing your schedule in such a way that you have time to, run off to a doctor's appointment, and then remembering to take medication or other things that need to be done on a regular basis.
So if you or a loved one is always late with serious consequences, what do you do? First, Barkley says, get a diagnosis. ADHD treatment, usually including medication, works the vast majority of the time. But Tuckman says taking practical steps to deal with time blindness also helps.
Lots of clocks that are easily visible is a key component, because if you can't even see what time it is, then how do you plan around it? A recommendation that I often make is, rather than your standard kind of digital clock, instead use the old-fashioned analog clock, like the clocks that have like two hands that move. And the reason is, when you see that hand moving, time becomes much more tangible. Like you can literally see the hand. Whoop, we're getting close. Okay, got to leave when it hits 12. It's now on the 9. Oops, it's almost on the 10. It's coming up on 11. Here we go. We're almost at 12. It's still a good idea, even for older teens and adults, to use time in a much more tangible way.
Barkley says taking other steps to accommodate time blindness helps too.
It may have to do with your workflow. It may be breaking large projects into very tiny steps. Do 3 or 5 problems, take a break. Do another 3 or 5 problems in your schooling or your college course, whatever it is you happen to do. Make yourself accountable to other people. When you make a commitment at work or in your private life, have people check in with you, or you should be checking in with them a lot more than other people do, so that they can monitor you and keep you accountable for what you agreed to do. In addition, you can rearrange consequences in your life so that they're occurring more frequently than they would with other people. Again, making yourself accountable to others is part of that sort of strategy. And then finally, just learning that activity and movement while you're working are very conducive to paying attention if you have ADHD. So you should be squeezing a tennis ball when you're in a business meeting, or, you can be chewing on some gum or tapping your feet or standing at a stand-up desk when you're working, in order that you can move and shift your body, because movement benefits these people far more than it does others.
Barkley says people don't cause their inability to measure time, so they shouldn't feel guilty about it. But they have to own it and do something about it just the same. The world still expects us to be on time, and the consequences for failure are real. Dr. Russell Barkley's most recent book, 12 Principles for Raising a Child with ADHD, is available now. You can find out more about all of our guests on our website, radiohealthjournal.org. I'm Reed Pence.
With many opportunities to celebrate during fall and winter, preparing foods for all the festive occasions can be both a joy and a challenge. Selecting basic foods that can work in multiple ways, such as fresh grapes, can simplify things greatly. According to registered dietitian Courtney Romano, health advisor to the California Table Grape Commission.
Fresh grapes are beautiful. They taste great and are easy to keep around for everyday eating as well as special occasions. Keep some on hand for a healthy snack option. Arrange them in a pretty bowl for a classic and edible centerpiece, or in small clusters on a serving platter. Use them as a special ingredient. Heart-healthy grapes can be dipped in dark chocolate for a delightful dessert that is good for you, too.
Heart-healthy grapes from California are in season from May through January. Grapes of all colors, red, green, and black, are a natural source of beneficial antioxidants and other polyphenols, which may help contribute to heart health. Visit grapesfromcalifornia.com for more information.
For those who qualify for Medicare, fall open enrollment is underway now. If you pay out of pocket for prescription drugs, choosing the right Medicare prescription drug plan can help save money. Picking a plan that fits your needs can be a simple process with these tips and by working with a trusted partner like Walgreens, who has a number of tools available online and in store. First, evaluate your plan every year as coverage and benefits change. Also, talking to an independent insurance broker can help, which is why Walgreens teamed up with eHealth, an independent fully licensed insurance broker, to offer free advice, which may save you hundreds of dollars and no obligation to enroll. Last, check if your pharmacy is in your plan's preferred network. A Walgreens pharmacist can help lower costs by finding generic alternatives or a lower-cost brand name medicine to treat the same condition. Visit walgreens.com/MEDD to learn more and get started. That's walgreens.com/MEDD.
Multiple sclerosis affects an estimated 1 million adults in the U.S. alone. In multiple sclerosis, the immune system mistakenly attacks the central nervous system, affecting a person's muscle control, balance, vision, sensation, and cognitive function. Though the exact causes are unknown, Epstein-Barr virus, a very common virus which causes mononucleosis, is the only risk factor identified to date that appears to be necessary for the development of MS. An investigational therapy called ATA188 specifically recognizes Epstein-Barr virus-infected B cells. It is currently being studied in a clinical trial, which is now seeking participants. If you or someone you know is living with progressive MS and is interested in participating in the ATA188 clinical trial, please email patientadvocacy@atarabio.com to learn more and find a trial site in your area. That's patientadvocacy@atarabio.com.
An estimated 23% of people will experience a bunion, a condition where a bone in the foot grows out of alignment. With traditional surgery, bunions come back about 70% of the time. Now a treatment called Lapoplasty 3D bunion correction addresses the root cause of a bunion with a demonstrated low rate of recurrence. Dr. Paul Dayton of the Midwest Bunion Center in Iowa explains how it works.
Pain from a bunion can be severe and make it difficult to be active. With the Lapoplasty procedure, we use precision technology to secure the unstable joint and realign the bone. In our practice, many patients are back on their feet in a walking boot within days. One study showed that 99% of patients still had a successful bunion correction after 17 months.
More than 20,000 patients in the U.S. have been treated with the Lapoplasty procedure. It is covered by most insurance plans and Medicare. For more information or to find a surgeon who offers Lapoplasty, visit alignmytoe.com.
And that's Radio Health Journal for this week. Radio Health Journal is a production of MediaTrax Communications. Follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram to learn more. And check Apple Podcasts, Google Play, and Spotify for a library of past programs. Plus, you'll always find previous segments and information about our guests at radiohealthjournal.org. Join us again next week for another edition of Radio Health Journal.
Coming up next week on Radio Health Journal.
Even the patients I see who tend to be COVID deniers seem angry. People in general seem more angry, and that's an effect of it.
How COVID stress is wearing down almost everyone.
Then music therapy.
Probably the most common misconception is there's the therapist and then there's just somebody listening to music. But it's actually in actively engaging in music making that we have the most greatest potential for change.
All that and more on Radio Health Journal.